We're looking at the future direction of the digital built environment, education particularly focus. So this is a facilitated session. So we've just strong armed a number of the audience onto these chairs, and we'll see where this goes. So it's a bit of a free for all. We want engagement. We're trying to encourage engagement. And that's why we're doing it in this format of just trying to get everybody involved. So yeah, it's a debate. It's a discussion. So even if you don't want the chairs front, feel like it.
I don't want to do too much for anybody, but I thought I'd bring it out here. I'd rather my own peace of mind know it.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're gonna Mustafa's gonna step in and chair this one. So be kind to him. Didn't know that until about 20 minutes ago.
Afternoon, everyone. Trying to fall asleep after lunch. Welcome to this session on the future of the built environment. On the panel, we have Tagoy from UCL, Mohammed Kassim from Newcastle University, Fiona Godfrey from Liverpool John Moores, and Barry Macaulay from Technical University in Dublin. A round of applause for them. Okay, so as presented by Paul, it's more of an interactive session. The aim of the session is to look at competencies in the built environment, as well as future gazing from the perspective of academics, industry participants, technology providers, and all stakeholders here present. So I will try to facilitate the session. We will go around the panel, and feel free to jump in at any point if you have any comments or questions. So the first question is, looking at the construction industry now, the gaps that we do have in competencies. And at the moment, there is the current discussion around the project management and information management divide. Are project managers expected to have information management competencies, or do we need to have specific professionals that do have those competencies? How are we able to progress in the industry? So just to ask, how do you think digital transformation will redefine the core competencies that we need in the next decade?
Ladies first.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I'm quite sort of passionate about at the moment, I've done some research on it, and I've also through our industrial advisory panel groups that we have at John Moores University, as much as the digital competencies, that we are needed, and in a lot of programs they are there. I think one of the things that we're getting asked regularly is about the social competencies, the personal competencies. So we're continuously hearing our graduates have got a lot of the technical competencies, the knowledge, but I think post-COVID, one of the things that a lot of students don't have is those communication skills, and not just the verbal communication skills, confidence skills, but even in things like how to communicate professionally through emails and things like that. So something at John Moores that we're doing at the moment, we are going through our what we call a periodic programme review, is looking at not so much the content, because obviously we meet all the accreditation requirements and everything else, but more about how we deliver and how we assess, taking into account the students are very different and that they need to develop these other competencies as well as all the other stuff.
Good. Yeah, good question. From my perspective, I suppose I think in our site, so one of the things that is difficult in that is the range of job titles that are out there at the moment. So from my perspective, I know I've seen there LinkedIn, BIM manager, BIM coordinator, BIM modeler, a new one called BIM evangelist, which is a wonderful title. So I think all of these is causing a bit of confusion, and it's making it more difficult. in terms of those core competencies, what we've done in our program, and once again, I can only talk about the masters that we run, is that we do have streams. So when you do initially come on, you pick one of mechanical, electrical, construction management, architecture. And within those 3 streams, we can kind of focus on kind of those competencies before we move you then more into the kind of the federated, collaborative process. But you have that base before you go into those modules, so then you're able to kind of look deeper and understand how they apply to you. So there are elements there. I believe that from an education perspective, we can work with that.
I think I'm going to need a couple of minutes to ramble through to answering your question.
Okay.
Stefan. Look, I mean, way back when I sat on the government task force that was charged with introducing BIM to central government procurement, and that's where the mandate was, just central government procurement. What the government did then was nothing about technology. It believed, I think rightly, that broadly speaking, what software packages people used should be out of the market. It developed processes and standards. And as we had earlier today, there are 3 parts to a technology enabled change. There's the technology, there's the process, most of it's in the people, right? The government did nothing at all to culture change. No matter what happened through the BIM4 groups, the regional groups, etc. It just really left things at what do the procurers need? Well, we do a process and they need standards so that people in the supply chains can roughly do things in the same sort of way. And we're still in that sort of position now, right? It's kind of got worse in the public sector. There's no one here from the government, is there? There's no one going to report on this, Mr. W, right? I mean, the government have year on year divested themselves of technical ability so that they rely on their suppliers, they rely on regulators to do the things that the government used to be competent themselves in doing. And to a lesser or greater extent, other procurers have followed that route. So there's a gap there, there's a hole there, which we try and fill on their behalf. That's one aspect. If you look at another aspect, I'm a civil engineer, proud of it. I was president of the ICE a few years ago. Institutions are generally quite slow in changing the competencies they require for people to become chartered. Right. So I've recently developed a new 4-year integrated undergraduate master's program at UCL. It's in its first year now on construction engineering, innovation and leadership. It's doubtful whether the IC will accredit that because it is not civil engineering enough. Okay, so there's work to be done on that, and people do desire to become professionally or seem to be professionally competent, not just in the UK, but in other areas. And then we've got the fact that increasingly we look for lifetime management of information. And yet, if you look at the plans of work around the world, the 2 most used in the UK are RELA for buildings, Network Rail use GRIP. There are others. None of them go beyond handover or commissioning. So the most expensive and lengthy life stage, both in terms of money and in carbon, is in operational use. No one's learning about it. So there's a whole set of competencies there. Whether it all should come down to project managers to try and stitch everything together, no, I don't think so. I mean, they might hold some of the reins, but I think this real team effort is required here. So I think everyone needs to be more competent in understanding information, lifetime information, how it's handled. With due respect to Mr. Trimble and others, it's not really in the interests of software houses to make their products interoperable. So we get a whole different set of divergences there. Have I said enough? I probably have. I'll move on.
I think yeah, more like maybe my comment is a little bit manifestation that reflect what Tim said at industry level. I think, you know, we talked about student level, the construction management, civil engineering. I don't think they see information management as you know, something very key when they are doing their undergrad program. They're not interested. There's no space to add it to the curriculum. You know, construction manager, you know, see the way we teach them, they see the industry as in finance, as contract, legal, ethics. This is the sort of things, and planning, control. These are the things they learn. How data management, how digital affects those. I don't think there are many universities around the country have managed to infuse them. They add it as a bolt-on, and I think Jason mentioned our aim really is to infuse them. And even if we want to infuse them, we don't have the skills within the universities to use those, because you need to scale up every subject under experts to do that. So that's one of the problems. I think that's why I think this forum can play a great role. How can we embed BIM or information management in such grounded curriculum, very slow universities? And I agree with what Alison was saying about the university are really slow. To give you an example, I teach construction management for civil engineer at Newcastle. I was talking in the break with my colleagues. I have 10 credit. 10 credit. 10 credit is equivalent to like 20 hours of total lecture and seminar. And in those 10 credit, I need to teach ethical professional behavior, planning, health and safety, and also ethics, health and safety, planning, and a couple of more topic control, and a little bit of like awareness of digital information management. So it's really hard, and that's why I think this forum can work with university on how we can improve the situation, because we need changes from professional bodies as well to JBM, and also as to the content of our programs, and also maybe if we elevate the status of information manager and the importance of those two graduates somehow through certificate or chartership route or something like that.
Thank you. Can I just respond to Tim? I feel I need to. Well, I think you're historically absolutely correct that it has always been an interest for the technology company to ring fence their product, and frankly, even with nice words about interoperability, not really commit to that. What I've seen over the past 5 to 10 years, however, is a sea change in the way that you think about that, because none of those technology companies can rely just on a ring-fence solution. There is absolutely, in the modern world, data flows from one thing to another. So we need to make that work both for our own products and with everybody else's. And just to give an example of that, I suggest people look at Hinkley Point and at the work that's been done there, where there is a flow of work through design, yes, construction, the delivery of materials, on-site stuff between not just, so our products are used widely there, but we are sharing our information with multiple other products and then going into the asset owner's information with IFC files. Yes. So whilst I think you were correct, I don't think that's correct.
Can I respond to that briefly?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks. Yeah, I think Hinkley Point is a massive project, and I think that as a project that size has the resources to be put in place early on, to make things flow smoothly. Right. Separately, I've just completed, or I've just been consultant, should we say, to a project that's looked at the state of digitalization in the construction product sector. And there you seem to have a clear divide between the product manufacturers generally, there are always exceptions, generally, the product manufacturers who don't really know what they want and don't have trust in software providers, and software providers who think they know exactly what the the product manufacturers want and need, but feel they can't get through to them. Right? So we have this kind of dichotomy of views, right? And you've got the government there scratching its head, saying, "Right, we need this digital thread, etc. Why isn't everyone doing it?"
We'll carry this conversation on over that conference, I'm sure. Yes, product is very different because product is manufactured everywhere globally.
Yes.
So it's not quite the same thing.
I'll give you that.
It's a much more complex, actually, and harder nut to crack than the interoperability between bits of data, because you don't actually know what data you want to be there, or it's not agreed, and then the manufacturer will say, we want to retain that.
We'll talk about this another time.
Okay.
That must be separate.
Just thinking about, we're obviously trying to move from BIM to information management, and we can argue about that. But in many of our HEI institutions, we already have departments or courses on information science. Right, so in this forum, are we trying to reinvent the wheel that's already there? It's just come to me now, thinking about some other stuff. But, information science is a discipline already in many HEI institutions. We just need to apply that to the built environment. But it seems to me we're all trying to think of it as a new thing for us. But information science has been there for donkey's years.
Yes, that's an interesting question, because a lot of the questions that we have around BIM, if you look into information science, most of the answers are there. Are we trying to reinvent the wheel?
I think we can learn a lot from what is existing there. We do sometimes have a little bit of a sort of tunnel vision within all different sectors. So, maybe I had a conversation with Tim because I'm construction, so I think of built environment, but in my back at my university, there's civil engineers and they don't like to be associated with built environment. So I said to Tim, is built environment enough to cover it? But we do tend to have a bit of that side of mentality, and I think that's already been talked about. We need to collaborate more across lots of areas, and maybe within that knowledge sector of how institutes work, you can learn more from existing ones that have already got a certain base of knowledge. But I do think that the uniqueness is the fact that it's applied into the sector. So it's taking the base of what's out there and applying it so that we can use it in, the best way within our sector. I think that was what I would say, because sometimes some of this stuff that's out there is maybe blue sky thinking, and we've got a long way to go just to adapt and adopt and then get to the higher level side of things. And I think a big thing about that, which covers all areas, is tied to resources and funding, I would say.
Yes, massively.
Thank you. I think we have a wonderful way of complicating things. Probably don't need to be complicated, but we look to kind of distinguish ourselves just maybe for the sake of distinction. My colleague Kevin and Don has made a wonderful point earlier that, it's not digital construction, it's just management. We're using tools and processes to, implement better information management, better flow, more seamless interactions, and it's just kind of a different way of working and a more enhanced way of kind of doing business. But yeah, we have to kind of find a way of trying to, find a way of complicating that by adding on, these terminologies, which is, if you look across other sectors, you don't do that. It's just part of what you do now. And I'll respect here, to this panel today, it's wonderful, and the group, but I've been to so many different of these events where there's at least an hour gone on the same day discussed. Would we call it BIM? Would we call it information management? Would we call it kind of better information management? We were after revalidating our program, and I looked across the UK because we wanted to bring it full time and internationalize it. And there's about 17 or 18 programs I highlighted master level that I'd have BIM add-on or BIM in the title or BIM at the forefront. So, it's still, it's there. There's no, we don't need to complicate it. It's not going anywhere. At the end of the day, if we look at, and I know a lot of people disagree with that, if students, the first thing they're going to get onto Google, if you haven't got a clue of it and type it in, the mandates are BIM mandates. So once again, just going back to your question, Yeah, we tend to kind of overcomplicate things. You know, I mean, what we're just doing is just another kind of advanced use of tools and processes within the disciplines that we're all trained in.
I think okay, now maybe you a couple of minutes.
I think, I'm not sure if we are complicating, but the industry itself is complicated, you know, like structure is really complicated, it's project-based, we can't compare ourselves to manufacturing, we can learn some manufacturing, but we can't compare. I mean, I have seen examples in the last 2 years, some offsite, for example, take offsite as an example, which is one of the biggest agenda. I've seen some of the most wonderful offsite construction company who achieved technical excellence. They were outstanding. They were had PMP something like 80+%. They could design with a click of button, and they went bankrupt. So we have a problem. We have a problem. Basically, it's a very low tight margin industry. We can do all the fancy stuff, but the reality of the ground is brutal. There is cultural problems. There is large contractors still squeezing everyone below them. So we teach students as much as we can to do the innovative stuff, but sometimes they go as well outside. They realize that they gap. You know, like we taught them all those fancy models, but they don't do any of them in the industry, or they don't know too little. So I don't think I think we are in a tricky space. But that doesn't mean we sit on the side of the fence and watch and wait. We have to do what we think it's right to do for the future of the industry, and wait. Hopefully, the industry will change as well in areas where we don't have control, procurement, culture, things we can influence them as academic. So we have to work with all those constraints around us and do what's good for the student.
And to just clarify what Mohammed said there as well, like when I say it's not complicated, it's one thing, right? It's a complicated industry, and just trying to kind of like not add further complications.
That's a good segue to the next question, actually, because with our students, we do have time to discuss with them, and a couple of them came back to Jason and I and telling us that for the first time that when they go to the industry, in those interviews, they're being asked for skills regarding can they code, can they use artificial intelligence. So that takes us to the next question. Our current competency frameworks really align to current and future industry needs. Where do you see the mismatch between the graduate skills and those employer expectations?
I think this is really a good point. I work with some large contractors. I don't want to make publicity for them. They have already proper digital construction team that include AI. So it's becoming an important skill for students. I think, I'm not sure about also university, for example, at Newcastle, we teach students to start programming from the first year, and they keep learning programming all the way to the final year. And they do as well some projects using coding or time series data for cities and things like that. They're becoming really important skill. And I think recently we did a survey across 14 large contractors, and one of the key findings that we identified from the study was really, if you want to keep getting the value from digital construction and maintain those competencies and those skills within the company and get the benefit, you need to do something we call it orchestration. It's not anymore one time of alignment. So every year you have new tools, you have new skills, you have new alignments that need to be done. So I think it takes that point Alvin made, which came as well from our study, that those skills of aligning tools together and the adaptive workflow are becoming really important. I don't think we are teaching those in the university. It's challenging to teach in the university at this time.
What are the challenges?
The challenge, they don't sit in any specific subject, you know, like if you want to teach them, maybe you could teach them in probably good places, construction management, or even an entry model. You can teach them even in design. You can teach them to to develop an automated workflow using coding, bringing two different software together. But I don't think even at the university level we have the skills to resource, my opinion, because those are a little bit needs. Things are moving outside faster than our ability to adapt within the university. That's really hard. So you find in every, like, I think you're like, I think for example, civil engineering at Newcastle, I have a colleague who I rely on for all this sort of things, like developing goals, developing automated workflow, dashboard for data. We are only one who can do all those sort of things. So that, but I think we, hopefully with AI, I think we can take advantage of, you know, like vibe coding and see that it's making it easier for many of us to get into that space.
Difficult question, right? Industry can change much quicker than academia can change. You know, I'm a civil engineer, but I don't work in the engineering faculty at UCL. I work in the Bartlett. We have a similar type of split. So the surveying, the geomatic type of stuff gets done in CEG, civil, environmental, geomatic engineering in the engineering faculty. They don't do much with BIM and stuff. We do that in my school, in the Bartlett, etc. We know each other, we get on well, we're structurally separate. Sorry, I use the word structural maps. Within our school, we've got about 60 or 70 people. We're into the digital area significantly, historically, and still very much project management. We've probably got about 10 people now working exclusively on climate change economics. It's quite a broad range of topics. What are we doing about it? Well, we've taken on recently 2 and a third on the way specialist construction AI lecturers. We're fast developing a strategy for the school, and that needs to feed down in how we handle AI in each of our taught programs. We're already quite significantly involved and engaged in that on our PhD program. But you take soundings from industry, and of course AI is not one topic, it's a whole range of different types of technologies. Now my reckoning is that when industry says 60% of organizations are using AI in project management, a lot of that is at the ChatGPT end. It's that sort of thing. How many of them are involved in large language models, etc.? How many of them, almost certainly none, are involved in agentic AI, etc. So we need to keep pace and be a bit ahead of them, but in an area where we believe they're going to be needing it, right?
How do we know that?
How do we know? Well, if I knew the answer to that, I'd probably be at the races.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have to take soundings from people. I mean, this new program I was saying, construction engineering, innovation and leadership. We've got a really good senior advisory board, and they say things to us. Oh, you ought to keep an eye on that area because we can see that developing, etc. So we need to be ahead, but not that far ahead. Otherwise we lose them.
Kind of a multifaceted question. It's very good. I think traditionally as academics, one of the main issues is that the curriculum you already have quite packed. It's quite dense, and you're already trying to get through what's already a difficult lesson kind of plan to get through or module descriptor, and to start to develop it or add more to it can be quite challenging. So it's more, so it might have to drop in order to kind of accommodate that. So I think there's an element that it's very cultural as well, that your staff that you're working with, that your colleagues, that they want to upskill as well. They want to develop their knowledge in it so that they can bring it forward for the students to learn. I think there's a trust element with the students as well. Every module scripter, I know from my perspective, has a lot of self-directed learning, making those facilities available to the students. Kind of going, we're bringing in a guest lecture, we will, we have a limited time to discuss this at the moment, but we're going to do it. And then we're going to give you the resources that you could potentially go away yourself and upskill and learn. And it's making that available to them and trusting, them in that regard. But I think it's very important, the cultural element. Like, if you have the right people and the people working with, sometimes you have traditional, it can be difficult to get people to come on board with this. And that's the most tricky part, when you have a lead with someone in their champions that are driving it, showing other people how it works, showing other departments, how innovative this can be. When you the industry knocking on your door going, look, we're really not, you're not doing this right. You're missing this, you're sending us out to these people and they're not where we need them to be. And that's kind of like usually when we go, okay, well this is if it's business, this is our business, and we're not sending out kind of people that are ready to, it's giving us a bad name because people going out aren't able to do what the industry require. And then you kind of start going, okay, well look, maybe we have to start feeding this in. So it's a difficult question, but I think it really just comes down to having if you can kind of get people to buy into it that you're working with, you're fine.
I think I'll just answer it slightly different with a different hat on. I'm the chair for the CIOB accreditation panel, and obviously it's a lot of what that competence is and things like that. As a university, you want your accreditation and you've got to meet all the competencies. And I know with ourselves, we've literally just gone through updating the education framework, which is what we call it for CIOB, for both the undergrad and the postgrad. And I was on the master's working group, and I know that information management has been written into the learning outcomes for the programmes. And I think, as you say, it's quite difficult to pack everything in. So if you think of let's say my background is construction management, if you've got an undergrad programme, you've got to get all those sort of the core skills and core knowledge in there. And I think that what we've tried to do is sort of embed into the framework aspects of where these things sit. And I understand obviously where you're coming from Newcastle. The problem we have, and I see it when I go on accreditation visits, is that you've got institutes that are sort of almost pressurising programmes to fit into the resources rather than what maybe the course should have. So if you've got a lot of, say, commercial people in the institute rather than technical staff, you find out that you get a programme that is more commercially based rather than technically based. So you're then trying to shoehorn, say, a programme like I've knocked back civil engineering programmes that have gone for CIOB accreditation because you just don't have the management aspects in there. And then you have a conversation, well, why are you going for CIOB when you're an engineer? Why are you looking at the pathways to the engineering? I also know from frustrations in my own institute with the RICS, I think they've been updating their assessments and pathways, competencies for about 5 years yet, and still haven't released them. So it's a very difficult balance. And when you do sit on an accreditation panel, I in all my time, we've never actually not given someone accreditation. We give them a time period to sort of improve and recognise that, because there's industry on the panel, but there's also academics, and we're all very much aware of the constraints that we all work in universities. So, professionalism and ethics, that's a conversation that's very key at the moment. And it's like, well, do you make everyone have their professional membership? Well, if you do that, you probably would be closing down half the courses because institutes don't pay for your membership. And the recognition of that membership isn't taken into account. So there's a whole sort of very difficult to sort of align everything, across all the board between the sort of competencies. But I would say putting in all these different things, certainly with the information management side, I think it's got to be really sort of introduced and embedded within the skill sets that are needed, certainly at undergrad, so that students do go out more with what we would say traditional key core competencies, and maybe the masters is where things start to come in a little bit more sort of specialist within, say, the master side of things, because it is very hard to fit everything into an undergrad program, and institutes are wanting you to do less and less time. I've been at university for a very long time, and when I first started, you were on a 36 week year-long program, and now it's a winter semesters, and then it's down at 11 weeks per semester because you've got to have a reading weekend. And you know, you just get your time squeezed and squeezed, but you still got so much to actually put in. So there's a lot of constraints that you have to deal with.
Okay, thank you. I would like to crowdsource here, because this is really important in terms of how do you think we can anticipate those future skills rather than reacting to them? So from the panel, we got limitations such as program structures, resources, accreditation. So from your perspective, are there any challenges or limitations in that regard? Anyone?
I think I'll go back to what Professor Carson was talking about, the imbalance between the professions. I think you've got professional bodies one side, you've got the protocols of the ISO and international standards on one side, you've got technology that actually develops almost by the minute. You've got a lot of younger generation that now probably even 1 hour ago, they develop APIs and never that we never heard of. That imbalance, okay, and the continuity of it is making some profession progress much faster than others and making some other professions a lot slower. You find a lot of architectural technologists nowadays, for instance, okay, are making much more faster ways in performing profession and BIM jobs compared to civil engineers.
So how can we adapt?
Well, it's not about how can we adapt, but one of the aims or objectives of this forum, hopefully with what we call forum or not, that's a separate story. But one of the things that we need to do, we need to probably reverse engineer. Also going back to what Mark mentioned, we need to reverse engineer some of the things that actually do work and not just establish completely new things and change, because there are some successful programs in the nation that have been running for a number of years with sustained records, good graduate outcomes, and we can take some lessons from them and adapt them. On the other hand, I think that with professional bodies and the ISO standards and working with technology pace, that's going to be a continuous story. But if we have an ecosystem that adapts all of that into it, and we start from successful programs first, and we move on into other programs, I think it can actually make it work. But yeah, I think what Professor Carson mentioned is really, really important about professional imbalance.
To Tim's point, it's really interesting if you look upstream. So at the moment, the government is pushing on vocational education being having academic parity, which is fine until you apply to university. So UCL, I mean, I've worked at UCL for years and not worked for them because fortunately UCL has opened at East Bank for civil engineering, fantastic new building, except that they don't take vocational qualifications when most of the local people in the east of London are studying more of a vocational. They're going to Greenwich, they're going to University of East London, for example, because they can't get into UCL. And that's not because UCL, because they're not academic enough or they haven't got the grades, it's just that they happen to have a vocational qualification as well as their A-levels. Cambridge is the same, you know, Cambridge have wanted to be more wider outreach. We've got academically capable students, but they can't get to Cambridge. And you know, so and then you've got the disconnect between the vocational qualifications of often being in this space, so want to be more advanced in terms of technology and application and so on and so forth. And yet they're seen as lower down the pecking order. You talk to people like yourself who really, really champion this applied. John Moores University is a really, really great example. For years, I worked with Ed Lothel. He's seen some great young civil engineers come through, but again, they probably couldn't get into University of Liverpool. And it's not second-rate universities. It's nothing like that. It's just that this massive disparity between what is actually academic. And I've fought for this for 17 years as to what, and it's back to the point of keeping the academic name or something else that means that it is this, because you've got to be academically capable. And yet we're letting so many of the young people down. They're excited to go and they read about UCL, they read about UCL in the park, they apply to UCL, they don't get in. So I think again, from back to my point about lobbying and making sure that these young people who are coming through with the right attitude and the right qualifications are able to get into these aspirational places that are doing cutting edge stuff. It's back to government. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. And for the last question, quite a number of aspects around soft skills have come up in this discussion, from the right culture, having people in the industry that are able to interact with others. And when you look at the construction industry, you can sort of say that a project is a sort of a social network, because that's how people interact to be able to solve these problems. So in terms of those soft skills, I would like to know how well you are embedded them in your curriculum.
As I say, we've gone through a sort of journey. When BIM first came around, it was all, as much as it's a technology, the other side of it's collaboration. So we have interdisciplinary collaborative projects that went across level 4, 5 and 6. So level 4 across all our programme areas, worked in multidisciplinary teams, started with like plan of works. Second year, it was more develop software. Third year was more about how they worked, because all of the projects were live industry projects and they presented to a panel of industry experts. So it was more about the higher level at level 6. And then we have a level 7 collaborative BIM project. In the last, this was 5 years ago, we sort of had to remove that project because of logistics, resources, more the physical constraints. And there were some issues like student feedback and that. But what we found now, 5 years later on, over the last few years, that because the students are different coming out of COVID, that everyone, all the programs want that back into our structure because of what the students gained. And it wasn't so much all the technical, the knowledge of it, it was the soft skills, and it's that ability to work with us. We kept it on in the master because we didn't have as much issues, and that is based around collaborative BIM project, that's the name, and it's based around a project which is developed through Revit. And what we've introduced recently on the digital side is they look at their model and adapt their model using VR headsets, because we've got an immersive suite. So it's again coming back to sort of what you want to do and the resources of it. Lots of places probably have great ideas and want to do stuff, but sometimes you just constrained with the resources. So we're going back to the interdisciplinary collaborative project. So for example, you're talking 350 students on that first year project that's got to be managed. You've got to find rooms on a timetabling system which is not flexible to do things like that. So the willingness is there. And as I say, we're revert back to it because the students aren't coming in with those communicative confidence skills, the soft skills, and that's how we're bringing it back in. So as I say, it's looking at how we deliver and how we assess to bring it in. And as I say, from our feedback that we've got, and also as I say from some of the research, it's the emotional intelligence that people are after now. That's what they're looking for.
Okay. Exact same, 100% everything you just said there. We have a very, very similar system. I think it's having awareness. It's the multidisciplinary cohort that we take in, and we are trying to give them awareness of that, what's going on in the other profession, especially from the information management perspective. So across our honours degree in BIM and our masters, we have a multidisciplinary collaboration project, a BIM Federation validation project, and that is the crux of student learning. You may go on to do a dissertation, a capstone as part of it, but that's necessary to get to level 8, level 9 in Ireland qualification. From the multidisciplinary collaboration project, it's absolutely exceptional. the level of detail. Kevin here, my colleague, and everyone put into it. We get buy-in across the school from different professions. So we kind of get some from the QS, construction management, real estate, even mechanical. So we've different lecturers all there as the client team. From there, every year it's a different project. They're not actually even modeling until maybe week 6 out of 12, because they're spending all that time developing all the documentation that comes as per the ISO 9650. But as they're multidisciplinary in different professions, they're not just going in and kind of completing it as a group. You know what I mean? Each one of them are feeding in it from their particular profession, understanding what they have, and then they're able to kind of see why each person's responsible. And then they move to the modeling perspective only then, and then they start seeing how the federation, the collaboration model, and probably one of the most unique things about it as well, it's done in Autodesk Construction Cloud, no email communication, the minutes are done up there, everything. So anything outside of it is rejected. There are kind of requests for information, data drops, all got through in huge detail by the lecturers, hundreds of documentation that they painted to go through. But going back to your soft skills, I think from the BIM perspective, I think that's the only way to do it if you really want to get it across. And I'm not fond of that word collaboration because I think it's just a lovely buzzword thrown out there. But yeah, that's awareness and collaboration. The two skills that you have to hone if you really want to send back to the industry to get impact.
Thanks. Little to add, really. I'd say we would rightly or wrongly focus on communication skills and team-based projects. You can get through that sort of thing, then you're pretty well set up.
I think similar approaches. I want to say you'll be lucky first to get the student to attend. Nowadays, I think all the higher education sector suffer of decline. It's like exponential decline from the first few weeks. And the reason for that, I think we kept, since COVID, we kept the recording. So we still all of us record the lecture regardless. So students can really, fortunately for some who can attend, but they can basically choose not to attend. Which limit your interaction point. But when it comes to something like core soft skills, what we do is we do a couple of year-long modules and projects. We call them in civil engineering, DSES, design, sustainable engineering systems. So student work in groups, they cover the whole life cycle of the projects, all aspects of it, technical feasibility, location feasibility, cost estimation, technical feasibility, and so on. We do another thing called the bridge to industry. So students actually have to sit in front of an industry panel, prepare for interviews. But more interestingly, one of the amazing things we do at university is global engineering. So students travel to South America, they deliver a real development projects on live with concrete, steel for a remote community in some of the mountain in Peru and things like that. So we do a combination of things using industry, global engineering, longitudinal group projects, and problem-based learning as much as we can. Attention span used to be 10 minutes, now it's less than 5 minutes. So we need to get some engaged.
Thank you all for those comments. Okay.
Hi, thank you. Everything you just suggested sounds wonderful. We're doing it primary 5. At the point that you're trying to deliver these soft skills, the brain plasticity young people in front of you has started to disappear. It shouldn't be for you to deliver this at master stage. It should be for us in the secondary education sector to send you young people with those skills so you can focus on technical expertise. However, when we are taking young people across the world, when we are having young people at the age of 9 and 10 delivering in front of industry professional panels, they're continuing into a pathway that's making them absolutely standout young people by the age of 16. But the qualification at the end of that pathway doesn't put them in front of you. You are looking for people with A stars across traditional academic subjects, and you're weeding out the talent pool with these soft skills. They're saying, I can't get in there, and they're going off to events management and going into finance.
I would disagree with that. Having two girls going through education, I think a lot of education now, going back to teaching teachers, can be, don't say a word in the classroom, don't disagree. I brought my two girls up to stand up for themselves. And if you if a teacher says something to you and you go, oh, well, I disagree with that, you're out the door almost, you're almost deemed insolent. And I would say that not all schools are like that, just like not all universities are like what you're saying, because A-star and all that. But if we got a university that you're talking about, we wouldn't be doing at level 4 how to develop, to present and all the rest of it. So it's not, there's a lot of issues at schools, and it isn't about universities not taking the grades, I would say. I came through a BTEC background. And I'm all for inclusivity and widening participation. And I know from going into my daughter's school saying, we thought about construction, it's a cultural thing that everyone at school knows how to be an engineer and architect, don't know what a construction manager is, don't know what a GP surveyor is. Well, if you're a university trying to get into the school, through outreach or inbound, it's really difficult, and part of that is because they look at it, well, say you're in construction, if they don't really do like sciences, that or maths base, they'll go, well, we don't want them at 16 to go to a different place, we need to keep them in here for A levels. And I would say, again, coming from where we come from at John Moores University, we're not the Russell groups. If hardly anyone comes into construction management, because there is no undergrad school level or A levels in construction management. So you take anything. I can cite you two lads from Wolverhampton turned up at open day with sports science qualifications. I was like, so what made you go into construction management? Well, my dad said, and that's what you often get, it's parents. So I would slightly disagree with the fact that if they were all coming through like that, would all be great. You wouldn't be setting up here talking about what we need to do. How you get them to that, those students in, I don't really know. Because I think it's schools.
I don't often debate about schools. I wish schools do what you try.
Yeah.
Nearly every week I go to the school. I recently raised the head of school, one of the best schools in the area. I have to give them a lesson on how the teacher should communicate with students. Because my daughter came back to school telling me, teacher said, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't believe it. And it was true. And as I said, I don't want to make it about school, because there is a generation in school now, something like lots of teachers at the age 70 to 40, they seem to have chosen to teach at school, not because they won't like teaching, just because it's an opportunity available there and there aren't any alternatives, and they don't do justice for children. I'm not generalizing, but I wish school do what you said, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
We're running a bit out of time. A makeshift session.
So just following on from that conversation, so my background is teaching. I work for Salford classroom. I've taught 25 years in secondary education, and I've trained teachers. And I think you're right, there's new teachers coming through. But I think one of the problems is the English curriculum, is that in schools now, very much the baccalaureate schools are judged on their performance points. They spoon feed their children coming through. Mark and I have said before, they're not allowed to take risks, they're not allowed to fail, they can't just pass. Those creative curriculums are vanishing. My background is DT, now debt, and I think that's what we've got to look at, is what's happening in the English curriculum. How can we build that creativity back into the curriculum? How can we encourage them to take risks? And through collaboration maybe with universities and schools, where they can do that project-based learning, a bit more opportunities for that, might be an opportunity there.
In Ireland, actually, there's in Ireland, we have what's called a CAO, which is a point system. So, you know, for an A in geography, you get 100, for an A in pass geography, you get 45. So the college are done a point, which makes it quite difficult for students to get into that, into the, you know, tier level colleges, because, you know, it could be 560, 570, a possible 600 points, and from there it cascades down. So our education system is really flawed in regards to moving from, even though for Ireland, I think 50% of the population have an honours degree, like we're quite high up in Europe, you know, with the means of the way, they always find, you know, we find a way. It is quite flawed, but what we are seeing now, and I'm working on an apprenticeship at the moment, geospatial surveying, which we're going to launch in September. We're seeing that there's an awful lot more draw on a new generation of apprenticeships for taking those traditional models, civil engineering, quantity surveying, geospatial surveying, and offer them as apprenticeship routes. And that's offering more access then for kind of getting deeper into different courses. They're working quite well at the moment.
You want to come? Yeah, very briefly. Okay, very briefly. I don't want to turn things off on a tangent, but I made the comment earlier that AI is not homogeneous. Right? Universities are not homogeneous. We play in different fields for different reasons. I'm not saying, you know, UCL is better or worse than other universities, but the powers that be at UCL say this is the area we play in. Other universities choose their own areas. We are, by fact, interestingly, well, to me anyway, when I joined the staff of UCL, I had to resign from chairing the advisory board of civil engineering at UCL. Quite bizarre. UCL was the first, maybe still the only, civil engineering department in the UK that doesn't require A-level maths. So there are some of these differences are quite subtle. Some of them are far-reaching, but we are, you know, we're in the same overall swimming pool, but we operate in different parts of it.
I wanted to agree with her as well. I mean, to speak with myself, I would love your students to go to university. But a big chunk of my role is outreach. So I do a lot with the local colleges. We do a lot of events. We invite them in. I do a lot of STEM events. I've just done GUTS. Amazingly named GUTS, get into STEM. So I have seen the shift this year. This year, our level 4s that have come in are the first year that you're totally unaffected by COVID. And their attitude is significantly different to even our level 5s. Even down to we call it pressure from day one, but their attitude towards the teaching staff as well. We almost get our feedback red penned by the students because it's not what they want or what they expect. Talk professionally. They want to fist pump you when you come to class. You know, it's amazing. Honestly, it's true. It's actually true story. So I am hoping that we continue to see that trend shift again. Now we're moving away, and they have the kids have been through a more rigorous kind of exam period again. But we would love to work with your kids. We definitely feel very good in our courses. I think you're a B star. So we do T levels. So you know, similar every single one of them.
Perfect. Thank you all for engaging. And thanks to the panel, to Bjorn, Ferry, Tim, Mohammed. A round of applause for them.
Okay, everyone, we're going to move swiftly into the next session. Thank you to the panel. That's a great debate. I think one thing with overrunning sometimes is the great discussion. So I don't think overrunning sometimes is a bad thing. So having looked at some of the challenges in terms of how we move forward, the final session is to start to look at that in terms of what does that mean for us as a group forward, moving forward, and what are some of our priorities in terms of what we do in terms of responding to that. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Mark, who will lead this session.
So I'm conscious that I'm probably keeping you for trades that aren't running for months just to get it while you're trades the trades aren't running. So we could be here for a while. So you may want to wonder why guy from the Global Banking School who's talking to you about built environment. So, those that know me, I branched into the private sector of a higher education provider about 2.5, 3 years ago. And we have, amongst other programs in my faculty, the construction management program that currently has 7,000 CM students on it. Okay, so we don't have rewarding powers. We partner with a Salford University, and all of our students, the median age of our students is 37 years of age. So we don't talk about 18 to 21 years old. All of our students are 37. So the challenges that some of you are talking about in this room around graduates and stuff, we don't kind of have that challenge as much in terms of communication, those kind of things. Our students are very different. 71% of our students come from quintile 1 and 2. We're all about widening participation. So the thing you said about A stars, it's valid. We would take students that haven't been in education for 20 years. We're a very different institution to the majority in the room. So that's why I'm here. Before that, obviously, I've had a traditional academic background in the built environments, working at many of the institutions, including this one, the UK and Australia. And I very foolishly volunteered to try and bring this together, stop this being a talking shop. Many others. So what I've got to try and bring together in the next half an hour, people in this room, joining you to volunteer, take initiatives forward that we agree amongst ourselves, so this doesn't remain a talking shop. So on the agenda, there are 3 or 4 bullet points on here that have been suggested could be things that we could do going forward. Now, as an easy win, if you like, a response to the ISO 19650 revision is probably something that this group should do. Sarah's talked about it already. But, as a group of academic experts in information management, or whatever you want to call it, we need to respond to the revision of ISO 19650. So the easy thing for me to say is, put your hand up if you want to lead that revision. I know I'm not going to get any hands put up, right? But these are the kind of initiatives that, as a group, we should be lobbying. I think we really is why I wrote lobbying on it. We need to be lobbying people to get stuff done. And there's enough expertise, people in the room with contacts, that we should be that place from an education, learning standpoint, whatever you want to call it. We should be lobbying people to get stuff done. So it stops us becoming that talking shop. So I will just throw things out there, and then we're going to try and figure out who's going to do what. So as I said, the response to ISO 19650 is a very easy thing to do. The next thing probably we need to do is develop a program of events. Sarah discussed this morning, once with everybody else, we're going to do stuff 3 times a year. I don't think we have got to the bottom of when the large event or the 2 smaller events are going to be. I would see this as a smaller event. I would see a larger event as some kind of annual conference with a theme. I think somebody said this morning, it's 2 things I would say that it could be a theme, which is encourage collaboration in the education supply chain. I think Paul said that, and then something about educate the educators companies. Those are the 2 key things I think that we could bring out, could be the first thing for our conference. I'm happy to take debate on that. The other thing we probably need to look at is probably a more longer term thing. It's around, I'm going to use the word digital built environment as a term, debate whether it's right or wrong. But there's a lot of talk between skills and competence. I think, in my personal view, is we need to move towards competence. So what are the competences that we need, or industry need, or whatever employers need, that enable our students to be able to be competent in the information management field? So one of the last 2 things I wrote down was this forum needs to be a conduit, in my view. We need to be a conduit between government bodies, industry, education providers, including myself as a private education provider, we should be the conduit of bringing all that stuff together to start disseminating to all those different audiences what it is they need, we need, or whatever it is, to make sure that we are providing competent people in that field. And the other thing that in the last debate was something that has sparked in my mind. When we're recruiting people to teach our students, no matter what age, they're always quantity surveyors, but they're always standard what Tim said. You know, building surveyors, so you can't get building surveyors with the money now. Construction managers. Is there a piece of work that this forum needs to do that redefines the role of a built environment lecturer, for the better words? Should be building on what Tim said about UCL, you know, construction AI experts. Is there a role for us to define what a construction AI expert is? Or what is a construction information manager? Or whatever the terminology you want to do. Is that part of this forum that we want to do? So I've got the real hard task now to try and invigorate you all in the graveyard slot. Start putting your hands up to say who wants to start leading some of these initiatives. Okay. So the easy wins for me are the ISO 19650 revision, and let's decide on what a theme of the conference is, a date for that conference, and then start organising.
If I could just jump in, apologies if you said that when I left the room. Very much the idea of this group is that these meetings, conferences, and the forum meetings that we have are meant to be the tip of the iceberg, and that between those conferences, between those gatherings, is when a lot of this research work is done, and that this is about, these days are about presenting the findings of that research and of that kind of the feedback that comes back from those various discussions and little mini subgroups looking at different topics. That's where we turn from being a talking shop into to action. We can rather than just meet, talk, and then think nothing of it until September. It's what happens between now and September. So if we have a group that's looking at presenting some feedback on the ISO 19650, well, then there's the other side of that coin, which is how does that impact how we educate around 19650? And that's a theme for, you know, for a session or two in the September session leading forwards, how you change your curriculum to match up with that. So it's feeding into conferences between gaps.
You know, this morning Jason put on his slides all those different really tangible, measurable deliverables that many of us in the room all contributed to over that period of time. And one of them was the learning outcome framework. It seems to me that this needs to be looked at again and perhaps updated a little bit with the things around
that's underway with these. I want representatives from this group to be on the learning outcomes framework gathering.
So, you know, there's lots of things we need to do, but it's only going to get done if people champion them. That isn't me standing in the room and saying, I'm going to do all of them to comms. You know, I'm happy to be part of the organising committee of a conference, for example. I don't know enough about the revision of ISO 19650 because I've been out of the loop for a while. Can't do that. You know, I'm going to put my hand up and say I can do certain things, but I can't do it all. Jason can't do it all. Paul can't do it all. Paul can't do it all. You know, Sarah can't do it all. Mo can't do it all. Alison can't do it all. We need to do it collectively. So, you know, we can get smaller groups, working groups or subgroups or whatever the forum want to call, that when we do come to these meetings, as Paul said, we can update with where things are going. So who wants to be brave enough to put a hand up and say they want to do something? Oh, I've got those hands. I'll go for you first.
One of my other hats is I'm one of the co-coordinators in CIB working group 89, which is education. And we literally had a meeting last week about where does education fit in, obviously, the whole thing, because there's loads of working groups in this. It's a global research organisation, and there's lots of working groups. So we were talking about AI and how that fits in with education, because there's a task group that's doing AI in construction. And one of the things that we're looking to do is set up a task group. So how it works is working commissions are set, or in between they do a 3-year sort of conference based on chairs. And in between those 3 years, you can set up a task group, which is time defined on a particular area. And one of the things we're looking to do is to do a task group around sort of like technology, AI, all that sort of thing, from an education perspective. So it's only being talked about into have a meeting and then discuss it. But that is certainly something that I could link in with anyone who's interested in it. At this side, I hold my hands up. I'm not a techie person, so the coding and all that stuff, that's just not me. But I can certainly link in either feedback from the task group or the working commission, link across that way on that perspective. As I say, from a technical point of view, I'm not a person, but from that bit, I can certainly help facilitate and work with that. I'm happy to do that.
Sounds good. Good. Happy to be involved in the 9650 revision coordination. Let's just say, for argument's sake, you are the leader. Who would like to help Bryn with the revision or the commentary for? Oh, this is getting complicated now, isn't it? But I want to make a note of this. We've only got 2 weeks. Deadlines. So how can you make notes? Yeah. So just put your hands up again if you want to be on the 19650 working group. So Bryn, sorry, no name.
Barty.
Alex, you're too busy. You put your hands up. Sorry. Oh, from University of Liverpool. Okay. You missing anybody? You got Alex. Brilliant. So it's not very difficult, is it? Alison, you wanted to, yeah.
The office is right, but which term? But I mean, the only thing I would ask is, instead of how do we attract new talent in the sector, I prefer that question to read, how do we ensure new talent can get into the sector? So I don't think attraction is the problem. And I'd love to do lead on that one too, but also be involved in fit for purpose. So that's close.
So I think these are only kind of like talking points off the agenda.
Sorry, have we got anybody else on the new talent one?
Also, I was going to put to that.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Sorry.
These are only kind of like pointers to get the debate going. If we want to define what your working group is, then let's try and do that as part of the exercise. Because Alison's probably quite right. It's not. We're probably thinking it from a HEI perspective, maybe in FE. It's broader than that, isn't it? That kind of question. So who would like to work with Alison on that? I put my hand up. We can define what it is, basically.
It's kind of. It's just not life. Yes.
We come back to conference theme. Sarah started working on it this morning. Well, let's do it the way around. Are we thinking the conference is going to be a June event or a September event?
my suggestion for September to start the start of. But it'll be,
Conference in September, because we
yeah,
got the IP one, and we've had to coordinate it with Arcom,
seeds.
and that, and that's
But
one of the.
at the end of the day, you guys tell me when you want the next one to be.
Like you think of paper submission conference.
Or it could be, or I don't think we quite probably had paper submitted, but if somebody wants to come and do a workshop, or somebody wants to, come and present something that is, say, semi-academic, which is a really bad word, but we're not going full on conference with proceedings or that thing. I don't think to start with, unless somebody get it off the ground before September.
I think going back to what we've always done well at this stage, thinking we're kind of reviving forum, is actually building on the state of the nation and actually seeing what good practices out there and how people are responding to some of the stuff we've talked about today, possibly. Where people at.
That could be, that may be the thing that the conference and people coming on and saying, this is what we're doing.
And that could lead into a bit of state of the nation research.
Type thing.
Maybe get funding to do a wider state of the nation, but might kick us off.
Is
Sharing best practice.
It's a forum, it's not my show, certainly, but what do people think? These things are only going to work if you can get people down.
Yeah.
If you think it's a crap idea, then it's a crap idea. But we need to, I think there probably needs to be a line in the sand about where we are. And we haven't done it. I don't know when the last one was. When was the last one?
16. Last one, Caledonia, 10 years ago.
So there probably needs to be an update on the state of the nation.
Yeah, the State of the Nation report was 2015. Conference was 2016.
Yeah.
State of the Nation was 2015.
Would be the best thing for 10 years as an issue when you think, want to talk about academia, want to talk about architecture, want to talk about construction. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. Different perspective to it. Because in that report, we predominantly it's 80. But yeah, growth about.
But what do you plan to do with? Is it Scotland?
No idea. But again, we're looking for volunteers of organisations or venues that would have the capacity and ability with help and support from either Scotland or London. I suggest the next one.
Yeah,
Edinburgh and Glasgow. It's entirely up to you. It doesn't make any difference to me. It's what fits in best for the teaching calendar.
Wherever, if it's an ATI doing it, if, unless you've got a conference facility, you're best trying to do it outside the teaching time, because then all the facilities are available. And so if it's Glasgow,
Holidays on. It's probably numbers there, isn't it? Because I know even with this one, people will come back and say it's Easter holidays over there. I know you teachers don't go over there. An awful lot of you are away.
The sad part of academia. Leave this.
May, June, sometimes it's a good time because if teaching finish in May, June, not gone, we've still got schools around, things like that, straight go away. September's always quite difficult because that's when a lot of them are, and they tend to try and squeeze them in between September, beginning of September when everyone comes back, and the start of the academic year, which is the end of September.
So it's May here when we do the big one.
Yeah, it's not advanced.
Yeah, before people, and the teaching before we can go away.
Yeah.
Really into the holiday period.
So obviously, as to happen this year, but that's what we plan for next year. So, what if so we've got the big one in May, June. When do we have the other two then? What makes sense to also do the same? It's more December time, and
If there's one November-ish getting towards the end of that first initial piece of teaching, and people might have made changes or we've got a bit of a sense check of what's working, what's not working. Maybe one towards the end of semester 2, and again, teachers finishing exams and finishing, and then getting everybody together just before the break of some of the changes.
so is that November and February?
It's like people.
So two smaller ones could be a bit closer together.
Makes no odds for it. We run 5-week blocks, so it makes no odds to me. We run every year, every month, 5 weeks. So it would be a good time.
All right, so May, June, and then November and February are the suggestions. Okay, so the next one then we're looking at would be November. So it gives us some time.
No, we've got 4 sites in Stratford, so I might be able to do something.
Okay.
I'll ask to find out for November.
Okay.
Because I think one of the conferences is holding one of our buildings in London in September. It's the one in September. Seeds at Look, isn't it? Is it Arcon? Is Arcon this year? These are the conferences, definitely a bit of environment conferences, you know, one of our buildings. It must be geared up for it. I'll ask.
So have we got anybody interested in leading the state of the nation?
What is the state of the nation like?
I think there's different interpretations of it, but I think the thing for me is to understand where the gaps are. So we look at not just at PG, but look at the whole landscape. No, it's a research topic. It's a research topic.
So at the end of it, you've got like a publication that says across the, let's call it education sector, from but you know, from primary through to masters probably, you know, where are we?
Strengths, weaknesses, where can we help, what needs support?
Well, what's the first more of yourself? Or 3 of yourself? Or
We're not going to solve the world today in the next 10 or 15 minutes, but
try
you
to.
know, if we can start getting smaller working groups together that are going to organise and meet outside of this, so that when we do come together in November, that those groups almost form part of the day to say this is where we are. Yeah, this is where we're going. Have we missed anything? And they generate that debate in these kind of forum. We call. Okay, what else is on my agenda?
It's fantastic.
Do we need an educating the educators event? That tie in with.
Does that have to follow on from the state of the nation? Do we have to find out where the problems are before we start there?
I think we've known the problems. We've known the problems for the past 20 years. Haven't got it solved.
But yeah, I'm saying that could be a focus of the state of the nations actually, because we didn't really sort of touch the surface on it, but we didn't really drill down to where we're at in terms of staff competencies. We basically, I think we, one of the findings was that was the issue, staff competency to do with that, and we didn't drill down to any further than superficial.
So where's the let's call it the conference is in May next year.
Well, November, the next one, and then the big one.
No, the big one. It's called the big one is the conference. The other one's meetings or something.
Yeah.
One major.
So if the conference is in May next year, would the state of the nation be the theme of that conference, or would the educator be the? What I'm thinking is that we need, if we can get to a point where we know what the theme's going to be, we can make sure we hit that.
My feeling is one of the 2 small ones we focus on, maybe not the whole time, but like we did with the past one, we focus quite a considerable amount of time to start work on that and shape it up and start to feed into it. And so whether we use the whole, but are we talking small ones, half a day? Is that what we're thinking, half a day?
We talked about splitting the days going forward, so half a day of learning, half a day of research and discussion.
So the next one could be after that research could be starting to work that out. Between now and that meeting, 4 of us could start to start and we can shape it at that.
Yeah. Do you think that the conference, the big one, needs a theme, or is that involved? Is that going to be? Is that more multiple streams?
if you do multiple streams of a theme, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So, you know, if you've got a theme of educating educators, for example, right, you would like to think that Ben et al. Would have some kind of event that would do, this is what's available to you. These, over here, there's something around, come on this learning journey or whatever it is, I don't want to call it training, but learning journey about what it is to be a digital professional, whatever it is. You know, you can start planning those things out to make sure that the groups are feeding into that. So you're not always calling for people to do stuff at the conference. It's always planned out for the year.
Yeah. Not do it in the break. Okay, we balanced.
You know, this was always going to be one of those types of events because we're trying to figure out what it is we want to do. Right, so potentially State of the Nation is November forum.
Yeah, I think between now and then we can do some prep work and then we can spend some time there collectively as a group, shaping the whole, whatever that's going to be, scratching a survey.
Yeah, but I think what Paul's done with the Slido thing is really good for that.
Yeah.
Because you can start talking about key themes or issue, and that's a good way of gaining data.
And for me, just sort of the one I put down, I call it "Are we fit for purpose?" As far as I'm concerned, that's a really important topic. That conversation between industry, educators, awarding bodies, accreditation bodies, is what we're doing collectively, and it feeds into a lot of the conversation that began today. You know, our qualifications fit for purpose for, you know, for feeding into unis or the uni courses for preparing graduates. To me, that's a you know, a forum in its own right, because that's targeting the audience of who we want here. We want, you know, the awarding bodies here. We want somebody from the Department for Education here. We want several people from employers to be in the room to have that debate, to have the conversation. So I think some of the forums will be like that, where we're targeting the audience and to a certain extent targeting the sponsors based upon who the audience are. So I think that's one. I know Alison, that's one close to your heart, that conversation.
Yeah, scrapple or already bodies. I'm sorry.
She's busy.
I'll get it.
She's on a series of racks. Just be turning the handle at the end.
I have to be a little bit careful.
Yeah.
Only because of some work I'm doing. The DFE now.
Okay. But certainly
I'd love to
help.
read it in secretly.
Well, you could help point to what we need to have in the room.
I think again, just to that point, so the CEBE or CEB or whatever they are, there's already an existing education forum where all the awarding bodies work with the construction sector, and there's the universities and all that on there, and they're with respect doing exactly the same thing. So, and this is why I was saying earlier around, you know, almost this almost becomes, it's to you as well, Paul, that this almost becomes an alliance and invites everybody to get involved, so that you're not seen as insular. Because that has been going on with the CEB for about 2 years.
Okay.
Is there something with what you were saying that one, if that one takes place for the bigger one, it gives you time to figure out who we would like to target or who we would like to get involved with a bigger piece of work about maybe getting a little bit out so we can identify who we would want to maybe invite along to give you something specific. You do the first one where we're going to test where everyone's out. Everyone can go away, do a bit of work on it, come back for the next one, and we go, right, okay, so this is what we've got, who do we want to target, who do we want to bring to the big one?
Yeah.
So that first kind of year, if you like, because once it's established and you start to build those relationships, themes will naturally come out. So feedback will be right, okay, well, what do you want to see next? What would you like to revisit? What would you like to? And it might start to build its own momentum.
Yeah, so November, February, go to the conference. This is exactly what you described, isn't it?
Yeah. So, you know, if that first one is around where we're at, and the second one is, so now we know where we're at, we know where our gaps are, who do we want to invite? And then there's a bit of work to go, would you like to come and support us?
But I suppose to Alfon's point, if there's a bigger conversation going on already, do we want to get involved in that, or do we want to keep our eye and focus?
I guess it depends on which way you want to do it, because you could say you want to keep your own identity, so you decide you want to gain out of them, and then go to them and say, what have you got to support, what to support?
Yeah.
We go to them and say, how can we support you? It's
First thing, find out what we're doing, and then we can, a bit like the touch route, we're learning outcome framework that week, and set up just a framework. Find out first of all what we're doing, and then as a group, do we feel we've got something to contribute? If we do, it's our contribution. I'm sure they're not going to turn us down if we're willing to support them, like the big touch route or set up a digital group that Britain. So maybe find out first of all. One other thing I was going to say is what we use for the CIB, the education street, and the others, finding out what does the map look like in terms of some of the initiatives that we might not be aware of that we should do. The obvious ones, we're obviously aligning with, but what else is out there that we all think we should be aligning with, finding out what they're doing and how we can give them.
I mean, I probably should know the answer to this, but you know, other things like the construction leadership council and all those things still happening and all that kind of stuff. You know, so you know, they either need to be part of those discussions or lobby into those.
Neither is some quite embedded into that, so they're aware of that we're up to. AMI is a joint BIM CLC initiative.
Okay. Anything else that we think we need to be doing? I should have asked this question before standing up here and opening it up. Do we need some kind of organising committee or whatever we're calling ourselves? I think we asked about who wants to be chair and all that kind of stuff. Do we want to ask for volunteers to be part of like an organising committee? Steering group. Yeah, steering group's a better word. So you know, if you want to be part of the steering group, just, you know. How everybody wants to do it.
volunteers who join boards.
Volunteer somebody else.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Volunteers. I know who he is, but I'll get to it.
Is there any more private education providers? Possibly. Probably that voice.
Why haven't done it? You're already on to.
Well, yeah. Did we say I was going to carry on? Oh, yeah. So the Mohammed attack. I guess the last thing for me then, because I don't even know what time it is because we're watching.
Almost half past.
Almost half past. Okay, is there anything that anybody wants to raise that you think we haven't talked about today that we should be doing as a group? Or
I've seen stuff about the potential for GCSE which is very momentum. I didn't know whether the IT should.
I've just literally sent an email to Lord Gascoigne. So yesterday there was day before yesterday there was House Lords Committee meetings, the Built Environment Committee again, BCC, RICS. Put through a report and last year that we need a built environment GCSE brackets don't have debt. So debt you already mentioned, debt used to be an included GCSE. Yeah. But I somewhat challenged that because I think we're trying to get over the GCSE isn't so bullet for me because we've got no teachers to teach it. So yeah, it should be, and there probably could be because the level 3 reform is complete now. The minister's feeding back into that, so it was at the APPG for skills a few weeks ago. So the next reform will be around the level 1/2. It will more than likely be an A star to G again, level 1/2. But again, the government's just not in a position yet to be looking at the GCSE until they've drawn a line with the level 3 report. But I said to the minister a few weeks ago, success at level 3 has to start with success at level 2 and level 1, which she's on board with. But I think you've probably got to give it another 10 years, another year or so. But it is on the very much on the radar, which is why I can't do it. I think it just was actually.
It's been moved around anyway.
It's
Yes.
there's loads of people fall into it, but like I say, from a policy point of view, it's not just something that will fix the problem.
I'm sure if it's something that, you know, to bring in the education and
It needs to be
ability,
it's
whether that's something that can be difficult.
it is a lobbying issue because when the call comes, everybody's got to be on that. Nobody's on the call in 2018 and nobody, although if you were, Jason, you won't have. But it went to the House of Lords back in 2018 and nothing happened because I think, to be fair, everybody had their own issues in 2018 and it wasn't just an issue that schools, I think they just thought that everybody would come through and now we're in this state. So it can't happen again in 2018.
So when the call comes, do you want individual institutions or do you want a path?
It needs to be collected. You know, like the road call for the same back in 2018. It's painful, it's not joined up, but this time it has to be because we were now in very desperate situation. I think the whole sector, the universities, the fact that the same with re-closing courses, we've got students who want to study building surveying, there's no course for them. Geospatial surveying, no course for them. UEL's got 8 students, that's all geospatial. Coventry haven't got the teachers. Sheffield had to pull out because they didn't have the teaching staff. So the whole thing. So, and that's why I would say educate the educators to save the nation. There's one hell of a lot wrong before we start to even educate the educators because it's like in what? So they're going to strategy levels. I mean, probably Daisy would have a view on that. You know, I certainly do.
I think you've nominated Daisy for the working group. I think that's what I took from that.
So you in Stockport.
If you ever get there. Because my phone,
Not by train.
not by train, definitely. Last word, and then Jason's going to summarize.
I think we can improve communication. Do we have social media presence?
Well, we've got a name, we've held off on stuff like that.
Yeah. Once we've got the name.
Yeah.
Yes, but
We have a website, we'll have all sorts of things.
LinkedIn page, you know, all kinds of stuff.
That communication.
Yeah. I think that's interesting.
And just to reiterate what I said earlier, I'm inviting expressions of interest who wants to be the next chair. So if anybody wants to send me an email and say, I'm up for it, then I'll send back a questionnaire and we'll value the responses.
Okay, thank you for indulging me in the graveyard shift.
Well done, Mark. Brought us back on time.
We have a way forward, hopefully.
Yes. So closing remarks. I'm not going to spend 15 minutes on this. Try and get as close to finishing on time as I can. Just want to thank everyone for today. It's been great being back as a group, and I've had several people say it's similar thing. That's been good to get back, get that enthusiasm, and it's been motivated me to get the forum going ahead. So thanks for everyone for their engagement. I think it's been really good. I hope attended today. If you've not been previously part of the forum, you've been enthused to be part of it, and you've got some value from today, and hopefully you'll get continued value as we move forward. I think we've achieved more than I thought we were going to do. I think that's a great how we've actually got those tasks and activities kind of programs. So that's great. Thanks. I know they've left now, but thanks again to our sponsors, because as Paul said, we couldn't do it without them. And to you guys, we can't do it without you guys. So closing remarks. Name is still, we still need to get the name, but I think we narrowed it down in terms of key phrases and key words. I'm sure we'll be able to articulate something that is pretty agreeable and represents who we are. Then what I took from today is we haven't moved a lot from where we were 5 years ago, probably even 10 years ago. I think we're still having the same conversations around the challenges within education across it. Alison, you're pretty much still similar frustrations. I know some of the challenges from HE, particularly, and even FE, Daisy, we were having these about 5-10 years ago, the same stuff around how do we, beyond you mentioned it, got 240 credits on a programme. how do we get the IM on the QS program or building surveying program, and what do we do? I don't know what I need to put in, those kind of things. So we're still having the same conversations. So it's not a good picture, but hopefully it gives us plenty to go at, and hopefully as a group we can move forward next few years and make some real impacts. So that's basically my reflection of today. I think it's been really good, and what we wanted from today is get back together, see there's a need and people's enthusiasm for getting back together, and hopefully identify, at least in the short to medium term, some activities and tasks going forward. And it's great to have names against that. So with that, again, thank you very much. I've had a most enjoyable day. It's been great catching up with a few people as well I've not seen for a long time, and seeing that interest still here. So should be refreshments outside. People want to stay around for networking, please do. Yeah, let me know straight away. Have a safe journey back, and look forward to the next one. So thanks again. Thanks everyone online for today.